Covering the Universal Orlando Resort for over 5 years, you are listening to the Unofficial Universal Orlando Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 240 of the Unofficial Universal Orlando Podcast. I'm your host Lee, and this week we are taking you back in time. Please join me as we go back to Universal Studios Florida circa. Does anyone want to give me a clue of what year it was when it opened, Hunter?
Twister Ride It Out opened on May 4th of 1998, approximately 2 years after the film originally released.
There we go. So join me as we go back into time. I feel like I should be doing the Wayne's World. Where the hell am I going with this?
God knows.
Welcome everyone to Universal Studios Florida and to our newest attraction, Twister Ride It Out. Please step inside as we attempt to allow you to experience one of Mother Nature's most dangerous creations.
The movie Twister is about one of the most primordial forces on the face of the earth. A force so powerful, so concentrated, it can rip the asphalt off a 6-lane highway. It can hurl a freight train hundreds of yards from its tracks, and it can even destroy an entire town. At the same time, a tornado is one of the most awe-inspiring sights one can witness in nature, full of majesty and mystery. I'm Darren Schmidt. I'm determined to confront that mystery by getting as close as possible to a raging twister.
And I'm Tracy Malaby. I can tell you when we agreed to make Twister Ride It Out, we had no idea what we'd signed up for, because as awesome as these twisters are, they're also unpredictable, appearing from nowhere, turning on you in a second, leaving no place to hide. Twist is about the coming of a once-in-a-lifetime monstrous tornado they call an F5. Darren and I are willing to bet our lives for a chance to study the innermost secrets of that tornado.
They call F5 tornadoes the finger of God. Few have stared one in the face and survived to tell the tale. Winds of up to 300 miles per hour, it is the most severe storm known to man.
Putting that experience on screen involved the most intense, the most frightening movie making I've ever seen.
Now, we'd like to give you the opportunity to experience what we went through. So if you're up for it, gather your family and all your belongings.
And join us on the podcast to hear, for yourselves, just how powerful Twister can be.
Did we enjoy a daft little intro there, everyone?
That was fun.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this, our Twister special. I think, when we heard about the sad passing of Bill Paxton a couple of weeks ago, it kind of popped into my head that I wanted to do this episode a long time ago, actually, and it just seemed with Jimmy Fallon getting ready to open in the old Twister building, and then, as I say, the sad passing of Bill Paxton, now was a time that we wanted to pay tribute to this quite old attraction at this point. So we thought this week would be the ideal opportunity to do it. So there you go. That was the Hunter, as we both got chastised on Twitter about, that was actually the pre-show, not the Q video.
You know that guy blocked me? Screw that guy. Flat out. See ya. Can't take a joke. Bye.
Technically, pre-show Q, it's all the same thing.
Well, yeah, it's everything before the ride, isn't it? So
yeah, technically.
Well, actually, that's still technically part of the queue because you were not getting into the pre-show until the very next room. Anyways, not worth my time.
But yes, the main bulk of this show is going to take place in a little bit. So I wanted to kick off this first part of the show with a segment we haven't done for a while, but I'd like to welcome Hunter back on with a fact hunter. So Hunter, would you want to give us some facts about Twister Ride It Out?
Yeah, well, you're going to cover the most interesting part of Twister Ride It Out when you have your big special thing taking place later on in the show, but I've written down just kind of a basic overview and some quick little things I wanted to address. So the New York section of Universal Orlando has undergone a lot of changes in the 26 years that the park has been open. Obviously, Confrontation transformed into Revenge of the Mummy, and then there was Ghostbusters / actually, while typing this up, I found out there was a Marvel show called Superhero Showdown that actually used to take place in New York in like 1993 to 1995. So I guess that's when Universal bought the license prior to Islands of Adventure. And then getting on into Twister and now going into Fallon, this section of the park is probably the one that's seen the most constant adjustment in an attempt to stay relevant to the current market. So jumping back to when the park first opened, in 1990, Universal Studios Florida had a lot of issues. It was a very troubled opening. but kind of getting into the mid-90s, the park was finally in a state of stability. And with Islands of Adventure on the horizon, the higher-ups were consistently on the lookout for ways to freshen up the original park. So in 1996, the film Twister released. Twister, not sure if you guys remember this, but it was a massive hit. It became the second highest grossing film of 1996. Mm-hmm. The highest grossing was actually Independence Day that year. So it grossed $500 million at the box office that year. So it starred Bill Paxton, Helen Hunt, and a team of storm chasers trying to make this data gathering instrument, and they get caught up in several tornadoes along the way. Really wacky, fun. You'll love it. It was released by Amblin Entertainment, which Universal has a partnership due to Steven Spielberg. In the North American region, it was distributed by Warner Brothers, and internationally, Universal Studios actually had full distribution rights. So naturally, with such a big hit on their hands, the heads of Universal Orlando rushed on getting the property into the park. So Twister Ride It Out officially opened on May 4th of 1998. Like I said, this was almost 2 years after the film was originally released. Paxton and Hunt, as we just heard from Darren and Tracy, they actually reprised their roles and present the attraction as a film-style experience fitting the then theme of the studios, which was Ride the Movies. So guests would enter into the old Ghostbusters Theater, which was Soundstage 50, and really just kind of experience the winds and effects that a tornado could produce. On November 2nd of 2015, Ride It Out performed its very last show, and it was replaced, or it's scheduled to be replaced, with Race Through New York starring Jimmy Fallon on April 6th of 2017. Kind of moving into a sad note, the attraction was originally supposed to open in March of 1998. However, the opening was delayed for weeks due to several large and deadly tornadoes that struck the Central Florida area that year. That ended up killing, as far as I can tell, 42 people and caused over 250 injuries.
Wow.
So, yeah, good on them for not, hey, come check out this tornado attraction. Oops.
Yeah, that would have been total bad taste.
Absolutely. The Universal
real life. Now experience the ride at Universal Studios Orlando.
Yeah.
Florida residents get in free.
Oh. Universal Orlando, they did donate, I think I read $100,000 to, I can't remember if it was Red Cross or another one of those funds, but in an attempt to help out the Floridians that were hit, they did donate quite a fair chunk of money to that, which was really cool. Aftermath, moving into the most exciting part of the attraction. Aftermath was the gift shop at the end of the attraction. That closed prior to Halloween Horror Nights 25, and all the Twister-themed merchandise was cleared out. However, you guys really missed out if you didn't go into the Aftermath gift shop, because if you love cows, boy, do I have the place for you to visit.
Yeah, I was going to say, there wasn't any Twister merchandise in there for a long time before that.
Yeah, it's all just cows. Hopefully you like cows.
And the corner of Wizard was.
Which is weird.
Oh, tornadoes.
For sure. That did end up getting utilized for Halloween Horror Nights 25. It became this really wide open, awesome gift shop, and probably the best gift shop from what I can tell from people for Halloween Horror Nights
ever.
Yeah, it was dope. So another kind of like false report that I see everywhere mentioned around this attraction is that Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton never appeared on the screen simultaneously due to this rumor that they had a super tumultuous relationship while filming Twister and they hated each other. And it's very apparent when you watch this Q video that Bill Paxton did not want to be there and he sounds bored. But I don't think there's nothing that I could find that tied those two into actually hating each other. I do believe this is actually a misconception due to Helen Hunt and the director, I think it's Jan de Bont, not getting along whatsoever. Apparently he's super demanding and Helen Hunt wasn't delivering the performances that he want. And just, it was this big ordeal, but somehow, somewhere along the line, that got turned into Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton hate each other. As far as I can tell, there's no truth to those claims. And actually, to kind of confound that, recently with the passing of Bill, Helen did post on Twitter, he made the movie Twister great. He acted his heart out. What a talented man. My thoughts are with his family. So hopefully that kind of lays that rumor to bed.
Yeah,
But
'cause
yeah.
it's something me and you talked about just today, actually, Hunter, when we were looking up bits and bobs about this, didn't we? That I thought it was true, and it has become one of those rumors that everyone seems to know.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, but it doesn't take an awful lot for things to get blown
no.
out of proportion, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, very true.
It's probably
Especially in the theme park world where
Yeah.
we look for
Yes.
lore and anything.
it was probably something as simple as they weren't available to film on the same day.
Yeah,
The commitments they do star in movies.
yeah, quite
You know.
possibly.
Hmm.
We want you to do it, Helen, but we need you to do it on this day. She said, well, I can't get over there, but I'll quite happily do it in green screen, a background in behind me later.
Yep. Next up, as part of our tribute to Twister, Lee and Tracy had the opportunity to sit down with Craig Hanna of the Thinkwell Group to discuss his part of the creation of the attraction.
So as Darren said there when he introduced, we are very pleased to be joined on the show by Craig Hanna, the Chief Creative Officer at the Thinkwell Group. Craig, thanks for taking the time to come and speak to us.
My absolute pleasure.
I know we've been back and forwards trying to work this interview out for quite some time, actually. I think I was looking back from the initial emails, and it's been going on for about 3 years at this point, but I thought now was the perfect time to discuss it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it finally happened.
Yes. Well, I mean,
Us
Craig,
too.
to give you a bit of background, Craig's been behind some, amazing creations, such as we've just been talking off air there, the Harry Potter Warner Brothers Studio tour down in London. He also spent 6 years as Director of Attraction Development at Universal Studios, working on many attractions, including my personal favourite, Men in Black Alien Attack. That is,
Excellent
Craig,
ride.
I will say that is the ride I have ridden more than any other ride in the entire world.
That's fantastic.
And it causes marital dispute.
It does, yes. We're
because
very
we
competitive.
both feel that we have to beat the other one.
We've had 2 podcast meets in Florida at this point with listeners and stuff, and a Men in Black challenge is what we've done every time we've been out. We have yet to win.
I love it.
But yes, as the title of the show will suggest, the reason we have invited Craig on is to talk about the Twister Ride It Out. So, Craig, again, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Shall I kick it off then?
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Craig, now, how did you end up working for Universal, and can you tell us about the ideas that they came to you with for the Twister attraction, please?
Well, I was hired in 1995, which now sounds like a really long time ago.
But at the same time, not.
Yes.
And started off working as creative director to develop a project that never came to be, as is often the case. And what year did Twister come out? I should have that in my head before we started this conversation.
1996.
Right. If you recall the trailer, it was the one where the family is running to the cellar and the huge tractor tire comes and smashes right into the lens at the end of the teaser trailer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that had nothing to do with the actual movie, but it was so environmental and so intense, and from a visual effects standpoint, never seen anything like it. And we Universal did not release that movie. And so I had seen that trailer and said, this is a very Universal attraction if I've ever seen one. Stuff exploding, stuff blowing up. That's exactly the kind of stuff that we love. And I wrote an initial concept for an attraction based on that trailer, not based on the movie. It's probably the first and only time maybe that an attraction has been developed based on a trailer.
That's cool.
Took that concept, which was, in hindsight, probably a little too cerebral, because it was more of a theater of the mind experience than it was seeing a bunch of crazy stuff in front of you, and started to walk around the studio with it. And people said, hey, a Twister attraction would be pretty cool. And about that time, the movie finally came out, and we went to a screening of it, and I left the cinema and said, right, okay, I was on the right track. We're going to have to figure this out. And I remember the legal folks at Universal started to inquire about making arrangements to do an attraction based on Twister. So after that crazy idea that was based on the trailer, the very first concept for a Twister attraction was going to be on the tram tour at Universal Studios Hollywood.
Okay.
And I had the idea of taking the tram, doing the things that you always do at the time, which was earthquake and Kong and stuff like that, and getting an announcement over the tram that there was an unexpected strange weather phenomenon in the area, because of course Los Angeles doesn't get too many tornadoes, and that we were going to have to seek shelter in the prop warehouse. Universal has an amazing and huge prop warehouse, so you couldn't actually drive the tram into it. You used to be able to, a long time ago, drive through it. They had created a passage. You could see paintings from the night gallery and armor and, just all that sort of random stuff you would see in a prop shop. And so my thought was, let's recreate that old experience. We'll pull in here for safety. And in the course of waiting out this freak storm, it'll start to rain. We'll hear hail on the tin roof above our heads. The whole side of the prop warehouse will get ripped away. We will see outside of this, physically, literally outside, the tornado sort of come in, a real physical tornado sort of come past in the alleyway outside, see a car go spinning by and explode. And then right above us, the roof would rip off our heads, and the tram would tip backwards so we could angle our view upwards to see that opening, and we would be looking up into the eye of the tornado. How that was going to be done, I didn't have a clue.
That sounds awesome.
So,
it sounds very similar to how disaster was, earthquake as well, similar along those sort of lines.
Yeah. So that was the initial pitch that we put together, and I remember somebody, I don't remember who at the time, saying, "That's great. We need something for Florida." And so the Hollywood concept was abandoned. The tram tour notion was abandoned, and we started work on trying to figure out something for Florida, which began by going into the Quonset hut from the film, and was a very similar kind of experience that I described from the tram tour, that we take refuge on foot into the Quonset hut. We're in there getting pelted with, the Quonset hut getting pelted with water and hail and things like that. We're looking out windows and seeing the storm approach, and on top of that, then the walls start rattling, the panels of the shed rip off, the ceiling rips off, and a physical tornado comes into the space, and lots of things blow up real good. And I remember the concept renderings for that we went and pitched to various senior executives, and that really was a thing that got the ball rolling. Of course, the first thing we had to figure out was, how are we going to make a tornado?
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing you do. You just do that.
So, how involved in the whole process of what eventually came up were you, Craig?
Well, once the project had become greenlit and moved into actual attraction planning, I handed off the project to somebody else, who then took that idea and the notion of, well, we're going to make a real tornado. And then the technical folks and engineers and everybody else that were required to pull something like that off really started to dig in to figure out how it was going to get done. And I would check in on the project every so often to see how things were going. And we did a variety of mock-ups and tests at the studio in Hollywood on a soundstage. One of the big questions that came up over the course of the design was, how much wind velocity is safe for guests to experience? And so I remember showing up at a soundstage on the lot, and I brought a 35 millimeter camera on a neck strap, because that's what people had back then.
Yeah.
Grabbed a couple of souvenir bags from the park, put some stuff into it to weigh it down, and then we stood on a taped off area on the floor as they turned on big set fans that you use to make wind on the set, and had I forget what the technical term is for something that measures the speed of wind. There's a word for that. And slowly started turning it up until we said, I can't take this anymore, or the baby is going to fly out of my arms, or something like that. And I would love to tell you there was some sort of really scientific basis for where we determined the proper high end of that wind speed. But there wasn't. It was sort of like, all right, I'm uncomfortable. I'm going to get something in my eye, or I'm going to have this bag ripped out of my hand, or my camera is going to flap and hit the guy next to me, or whatever. And so we developed a safe range for what that ideal speed would be, and said, all right, we're never going to exceed that. That's enough to feel like it's dangerous, but without it actually being dangerous.
Yeah. It's that awkward thing where you've got to do it a blanket experience for those that aren't that tolerable, but also the thrill seekers, because you'll always have people that go, oh, I wish they'd ramp that up, and then those, oh, this is too much for me. So it's trying to find that midpoint where it's okay for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in the end, it's an incredibly safe, incredibly reliable. Was an incredibly safe, incredibly reliable thing that was repeated many, many times an hour. So that all worked out great. I don't remember who had the idea, but I remember at one point somebody saying, "Wouldn't it be great if like a window shattered and then we sprayed you with ice cold water so it felt like broken glass?" And that worked in the attraction. I think some days it worked better than others, and you would have to tweak it to make it work. But I always thought that was a cool thing. People say I love to mess with guests and really psychologically mess with their heads. And certainly the broken glass was one of those things of like, yes, let's shower them with broken glass.
I like that idea.
It's become a signature thing at Universal now, because I know there's a very similar effect done on Revenge of the Mummy as well.
Yeah. They built a test shed in the back at Universal Studios Florida to begin mocking up and figuring out how they were going to manufacture this tornado and do it reliably. And there was a scale version of the building. My recollection is it was probably like a 20 foot or 25 foot by 25 foot by 25 foot cube. And you could stand in it and sort of stand in a little pit where you would be at the right eye line to see as if you were at scale in the space. So the team could look at and see, is that tornado going to be big enough to be impressive? And then most importantly, can you repeat it? Can you do it over and over? And is just a vortex of wind enough? Do you have to put stuff into that wind to make it visible? And what kind of stuff? And can you put debris in there? And what kind of debris? And so it really became this test bed for a lot of different things. And I'll be honest, I was not actively involved with all of that. I just remember coming out and sort of poking my head in and saying, where's a tornado at? And seeing what the team was up to. They got it to the point where they had figured out the vortex and figured out how to make it reliable, repeatable, and controlled. And so then it moved into construction and production. And during that time, the team was developing a number of effects. One of the things I said was a key expectation for guests will be cows. Like, you better have a flying cow in here.
Absolutely.
You can't check that box, right? So we went to a magic illusion designer named Phil Mendoza, who utilized a rig to create the illusion of a levitating object. And I can't give away how it's done because magicians would put a hit out.
Yeah,
the magic circle will be after you.
Yeah, but it was I'd lose my Magic Castle membership.
Yeah,
but the illusion works extraordinarily well, and they were able to take this apparatus and put it onto, at the time, what was sort of like a giant rubber cow. So the cow had sort of free wiggling limbs, so it felt very natural, and it worked. Like it was so amazing. The cow was free floating, and it not just lifted up and moved left to right at a fairly decent speed, but it also had to spin around and had to sort of go up and down, so it didn't feel mechanical. It would feel very natural. And over time, after the attraction opened, I'm now jumping head past opening, that mechanism changed. I'm assuming, again, I don't know, because there was probably some reliability issues with the mechanism. It spun very fast, and the illusion of that thing truly flying, as you know, did not last.
Oh.
It always felt a little ham-handed. And then, of course, it went from being sort of the awesome floppy cow to being a rigid fiberglass cow that was like something out in front of a dairy.
Yeah.
Which is what we remember.
Yes.
Yeah. If there's any video out there of the original cow, that would be great to see, because in my head, it was really good. It's been time. I got to add times past. Maybe it never was as good as I it was pretty cool.
It's been a long time, though. You look at what, my maths is terrible, 21 years at this point since it opened then?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was at the park about a month ago, and we were walking past the Jimmy Fallon attraction getting ready to open, and I said to Joe Zenas, who's one of my partners here at Thinkwell, I said, you're old when an attraction you put in is being taken out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So these are just sort of random anecdotes, and they all lead up to, of course, getting ready for the attraction to open.
Yeah.
And Cecil Magpuri, who is the creative director at the time, and is really strong at integration of media and in physical environments, worked out how to get the tornado as a projection to appear in the back. He really did a great job on working with the art direction and scenic team for the whole pre-show, going through this, the very atmospheric and creepy house, creaky, creepy house, all of which I just thought turned out better than anything that we had come up with in the initial Blue Sky concept phase. But then as it was, we were getting ready to get the attraction in and start to turn things on, had a really hard time making the tornado.
Really?
And people were like, all right, it worked in the mock-up. Why isn't it working here? And, it went from maybe it doesn't scale up, which doesn't make sense because, real tornadoes are huge.
Yep.
But maybe it doesn't scale up indoors. Maybe it's maybe there's something else. And again, I don't have all the details. So, ultimately, probably the wrong guy to talk about all of this. But you're stuck with me now. And with a lot of trial and error, because at the end of the day, this thing is probably the most analog, organic thing that you could try to create reliably. Somebody, and I don't remember how or who, came upon a hydrodynamics expert that worked in aerospace and worked in factory systems and automation and stuff. And that person came in and did a whole bunch of tests to see what was happening with the wind and the vortices in the space, and then came up with a series of very specific recommendations on how to make this more reliable. That I think involved the addition of some other high-speed fans, horizontal fans that were mounted vertically through the space to create additional acceleration of the wind. I think also was some sort of additional evacuation on the ceiling anyone who worked on the attraction listening to me talk about this now is going to be like, God, that guy does not know what really went down, does he? Because I can tell you with a great deal of certainty, it was 10 times harder than my nail scratching surface of a description I'm giving you.
Yeah.
It was
Sure.
so hard. But in the end, those recommendations truly ended up allowing them to make those modifications in the facility. And, it was getting close to opening. People were getting nervous, and be able to create that tornado reliably and repeatably.
Yeah.
And that ended up being the awesome and amazing thing you knew and loved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's the effort that went into creating that tornado, that they obviously got it sorted enough that it ran for. I actually got my dates wrong. It was 98, so we're 19 years at this point. Multiple times a day, 365 days a year for 19 years.
Yeah, yeah, and the actual weather, the weather outside, the real weather, had such a dramatic effect on the tornado inside. Like if the weather, if the barometric pressure was different, or the humidity was different, or the temperature was different, that tornado could be a little, not as impressive. It could be really great, and It was all of those sort of organic things that I think, way back when I was coming up with the initial idea, you don't really take into consideration.
No.
You're like, yeah, it's going to be bitching if we have a big tornado. And then, of course, other people have to sort it out.
Yeah.
But every time I went in, there was always something to get wowed about. And even the neon signs that go flying away, as the speed in which those things moved, and the engineering and fabrication of those to not make it look like a lame piece of show action equipment, which is so often what we all see in an attraction. Is the thing moves, whatever the thing may be, moves slowly because it just can't move like gravity, And that thing was always sort of a pleasant surprise for me, that it just had this very fluid, dynamic, high-speed motion that felt like going down, like this is out of control, this is awesome. And that's the danger that you want to have, and you want to experience, and you want to survive.
Yeah, safe danger.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what theme parks are all about.
Yes.
That's exactly right, yeah. So at the end of the day, I think Twister was a phenomenal experience. It was more than I ever hoped for when I sat down at my keyboard to write the first treatment and get the renderings done and get the storyboards done. And that really is testament to a bunch of really hardworking folks who just sort of had the tenacity to figure out how to make a tornado.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it's quite a shame at this point that it's closed, because at Universal Studios Florida itself, it is the last vestige of those type of attractions that kind of go into the secrets behind movie making.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I hadn't really thought about it before. You're absolutely right. That is certainly old school. Backdraft. Those types of attractions were of a very unique ilk, and the physicality of those things, and the fact that it was all real stuff in one way or another. It was artificial. I guess Earthquake in Hollywood's probably kind of the last of that, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, because they haven't even got Disaster out in Florida now, and it's a shame. I mean, there's been lots of debate, and we've talked about it on the podcast quite a lot, that theme parks are becoming very reliable on screen-based stuff, and it's good to a certain extent, but you can get a little fatigued with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I can speak only for myself. I miss animatronics.
Yeah, we say that a lot.
There was, the thing about when Epcot first opened, I remember going, I think the month after it opened, and there were just so many special effects, or so many physical things, or so many animatronics. There were so many different kinds of ride technologies. It was like an encyclopedia of theme park magic in one park. And the fact that all of that stuff was real is it probably makes me sound like an old man, but it is something that I miss today as we use media more and more, because I think that tangible physical thing can be so much more impressive to people that they go, holy crap, that's a real thing right in front of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same as the loss of like the people-led
I was gonna say,
rides as
yeah.
well, where you don't have.
You take Jaws as a prime example
Yeah, I
with
was
the
just gonna
live
say
team
yeah.
member who's taking you through that attraction, that you miss that now because it's become the same experience every time you ride it. Whereas when you rode something like Jaws, depending on what the team member, what sort of mood they were in or what type of person it was, you got a different experience every time. And I do miss them a lot.
Yeah.
It would be really interesting to think about what Jaws would be like if you did it, built it, designed it, did it today.
Well, that's a really good... I think you've just come up with a show topic for us, Craig. We like to do our armchair imagineering, as we call it.
I'm sorry,
that's a really interesting, because effectively, Skull Island Reign of Kong is the sort of modern version of Kongfrontation.
Yeah.
So to take that concept and see what would you do with Jaws in the modern times is actually very interesting.
You're giving me palpitations. You know how I feel about Jaws. You know how I still miss it.
We have a friend.
The original, the best.
I'll call him out on the show. Thomas Wagner, who's the biggest Jaws fan in the world. He has more Jaws memorabilia and stuff than ever. I mean, he made a special trip down. They only live in Georgia, but he made a special trip down to Universal to make sure he rode Jaws on the day it closed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's like what Dave Cobb did with Back to the Future in Japan.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny how, because we talked about it recently with Disney revealing the Navi animatronic for the Pandora world of Avatar. I'm hoping, because whether they say it or not, that little gang warfare going on between Disney and Universal is there, and I'm hoping that with Disney sort of pulling a bit of money into that animatronic, that it might spur Universal on to do it a little bit. I mean, you've got it a little bit with the goblins in the queue for Gringotts, but as a rule, the attractions have become very heavily screen-based.
Yeah.
But I think something like Forbidden Journey, I always say, is the perfect amalgamation of new technology with screens, but then also having those physical effects with the dragon and the Whomping Willow and the spiders and the Dementors and stuff. That's perfect. The perfect 50-50 relationship. But then I think... I understand in this day and age, it comes down to budget, and for reliability purposes, it's much easier to have a screen on than an animatronic that may go down. You know, again, I'm waffling now, aren't I?
Yeah, you are.
The Yeti at Expedition Everest at Disney's the prime example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it is a difficult one, but I'm with you, Craig. I hope the day of animatronics comes back.
Yeah, I think things have a season, things have a way of changing, and media is a great tool. It has a place. It's absolutely 100% not going away, and is only we're only going to see more. Certainly in an attraction like Pirates in Shanghai, talk about the perfect blend of media and dimensional sets and effects so seamlessly and epically integrated, and the scale and all of that. I'm in complete awe of what Luke Mayrand and his team did there, and the fact that it's just more is what makes it so great.
Yeah.
And I think that is a great example of using it as a tool, as a technique, not relying 100% on it to do everything for you, combining it with the animatronics, combining it with the scenery and the special effects, so that it's all just this beautiful, seamless thing that just leaves you like agape through the whole thing, because I was over and over again.
I can only speak from having watched it on YouTube, and it does look stunning.
Yeah.
I was there, and I said before we walked in, it's not going to live up to my expectation. I just was confident it couldn't, after having done the same thing, like stepping through frame by frame people's YouTube videos, and then I got off the ride, and I was literally speechless, and just like, what did I just see? And we got right back in line and did it again. I think ended up doing it 4 times that day, came back the next day and did it like 4 times more. And only after, 5 or 6 times did I start to go, all right, I think I'm finally getting some of the stuff that they're doing here now. It's incredible. And the scale and the budget, it's stuff that you can't get everywhere. You got to go. You have to see it.
So it's a hell of a trip for us to get over to Shanghai.
If we didn't have those darn kids.
Yeah.
Well, go in the summer.
I had a question. We kind of gone past Twister, but I did have a little question that popped into my head.
Right.
Aside from the rubber cow, now, was there anything from the Blue Sky original concept that didn't make it that you really were like, man, I wish that was part of it?
That's a darn fine question.
I like to stump people.
I was convinced that we needed to look up into the eye of the tornado.
Yeah.
But there's no practical way to pull it off in a real space. I mean, you could have done it with media screens, back to that again. But there was just no practical way to make that happen. And I think I was wrong. I don't think you need to look up into the eye of the tornado, but it seemed at the time like such a key moment in the film. It was obviously a key element in that original trailer where they went into the root cellar or the storm cellar, and the door rips off, and I think the father goes flying out, and the mother and kids are inside, and they're looking up into the eye of the storm. And I just thought that's got to be something that we do. But at the end of the day, I abandoned that as even a key guest expectation, because I don't think it was. But that's probably the only thing that I remember thinking, like, I wish we had been able to do it. Everything else that happened there, everything that the team ended up taking from the original concept and moving into, the bigger, badder, better thing, were amazing. The fire effects, the flying sign, starting off with, the drive-in theater in the background and all of that. It just, the atmosphere just drips. That attraction just dripped with atmosphere.
Yeah.
From walking into that creaky old house through the experience, like being able to pull off that level of environment and atmosphere, absolutely exceeded my expectations. But I can't think of, I mean, we talked about flying a tractor.
Oh.
Everyone just said, no, the cow's cooler. It's also funny. It's nice to have a little funny moment that's sort of a head scratcher in there. That's just sort of this incongruous moment there, like it was in the movie. It just seemed more to the movie's DNA than just having a tractor, an old red tractor zip by. And so that wasn't even on the plate for very long. But no, I think most of it made it.
Excellent.
And yeah, I think, the hardest, most exciting, most interesting part was, making that tornado. And I'm looking up at my wall right now. I've got a patent on the wall for man-made tornadoes. Thank you, Universal.
I was going to bring that one up as well.
See, that's awesome, because that's something, and again, like in the first part of the show we were talking about this, it's such a shame that you now can't experience that anywhere.
I
know. Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe tornado will come up in some other attraction in the future.
Hope so.
I know it's one of them things I don't know whether you know it or not, Craig, but at least the last couple of years of its operation, the Universal were actually allowing people to go and take what they called the booth tour, and that's actually go into the control booth and watch it from behind the scenes, as it were.
Nice.
Yeah.
I didn't even know they did that. That's fantastic.
Because we were out there in 2015, and we were out there when Universal announced that it was closing down, so we made sure that we went in and experienced it one last time, and we went and did the booth tour, and it's really fascinating to see it from the other side of the curtain, as it were.
The glass. Yeah.
That was brilliant.
And seeing the level of control that they have over that that experience is, and the safeties and everything are pretty amazing.
Yeah, that control panel was pretty impressive.
Yes, it looked extremely complicated.
I did laugh though when the guys up there, they had a map on the wall, And they asked us where we're from. When we said England, they went, not interested then. They were trying to fill the map with as many pins from different places people had visited.
Yeah, and obviously it was all US and UK.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, I'm not interested now.
They're hoping to get a new pin in.
Yeah.
If I'd known, I'd have lied. I'd have come up with something really exotic for them. But,
That's hilarious.
But, the booth tour was...
Yeah, awesome.
I'm pleased we did that. And that was actually the last time we went into Twister.
Yeah. And it closed down not long after. It was literally the last week of October, so it closed down
later,
like 3 or 4 days after we came home. So we were... And I know a lot of people, when the day it actually closed, loads of fans went out dressed as Bill Paxton's character and Helen Hunt's character. Which is...
Nobody dresses as a cow.
Love the fans.
That's good. It shows you it had a fan base.
And it's like a guy in jeans and a flannel shirt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not one person dressed as a cow.
Yeah, that would have been funnier.
Yeah, you're right. What the hell?
Well, Craig, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Really appreciate
Really
you coming on to talk about it. It's actually been really interesting. And
it's been a lot of fun to go down memory lane.
Oh,
yes,
good.
I know. We always seem to pull people in that, it's like you do realise that you're asking me to talk about an attraction that I worked on 20 odd years ago. There's a lot of water gone under the bridge since then.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
Yes, but no, we really appreciate you coming on and helping us pay homage to it as well. So, Craig, obviously you are part of the Thinkwell team, which is quite a substantial theme park and entertainment corporation at the moment. So, if people want to find out what the Thinkwell Group are up to, where should they go?
Well, go to thinkwellgroup.com. If you go to thinkwell.com, that's a Texas-based textbook company. Don't go there. Go to
unless you want textbooks.
Yeah, unless you need some courseware for university. No, go to thinkwellgroup.com and you can see renderings of new projects that we're doing. You can scroll down to the news section and read all the propaganda that we put out there in the market. And
awesome.
There's always something fun going on over here. We range from doing presidential libraries to branding experiences to live events and theme parks. So it's always something exciting. And if you guys ever get to Los Angeles to visit Universal or the Disney parks, let me know. We would love to have you come by. That wasn't out to all of your listeners.
Yes, not everyone else, just us. Yeah, that would be cool. Actually,
It is on our list.
Definitely.
Once we've got rid of the kids.
Yes.
Yeah. These theme parks would be great if it weren't for those damn kids.
Exactly.
Tell me about it. Seemed like such a good idea at the time. Yeah, not so much. They don't listen, do they? No. Never.
All right. Thank you, you guys.
Yes.
You're welcome. Again, thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've loved every minute of talking to you.
I hope everyone enjoyed that interview with Craig. It was awesome, and it's still fantastic that he owns that the pattern for that indoor twister, and yet we'll never see it again.
No,
which is such a shame, But yeah, obviously that interview was the main bulk of the show. I've been talking to Craig for quite some time trying to get this interview sorted, and as I said at the beginning, this was the time where I thought it was a real apt time to put this episode together. But we're going to wrap up. We thought we'd discuss the attraction and our thoughts of it, which I think there might be some people that might not be overly pleasant about it. But we did ask the Producers Club as well for their thoughts on the attraction. So why don't we go and read the Producers Club thoughts out first? Darren, do you want to start?
Yeah. First one I have here is Matt Tucker. He says, Twister will definitely be missed. It was actually my first ever ride at Universal Studios when I went as a kid. I remember being terrified, but then instantly amazed when the Twister showed up in the showroom. It was such an effective ride, I ended up having a nightmare about it that night, but this was the good kind of nightmare. It gave me the impression of Universal Studios that I will never forget.
And Todd Ellsworth says, my greatest memory is going with my 20-something son, Nick. We did the control room tour. We were one of the last to visit before Twister shut down. As we walked through the queue area, he reached up and tore off a piece of old flag as a memento for me. He seemed to realise how special this place was for me.
Tut vandalism.
Craig Lucas says, I always loved Twister. I've still never seen the movie, but the show was spectacular. Craig, come on, dude.
Yeah.
You should walk 500 miles for that movie. Hey!
Hey!
I would always make time to go and see it. There was only one place on the planet I could go to see that show. To be seeing that show meant I was in my happy place. The theming for the queue was one of those frozen in time events. You were stepping back into the 90s. Gone but not forgotten. Sleep well, Twister.
He's right, actually, Craig. It's one, we've discussed it. I've talked to Craig about this quite a bit, and he said it doesn't matter how bad any attraction is. If you can only ride it in Universal, you should ride it because it means you are where you want to be.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
We talked about stuff like this the other day. I think if you go now, you should try and ride every ride because you never know. It might be the last chance you get to ride it. Chris Rook says, strange relationship with this attraction. Didn't think any attraction whose highlight is basically a miniature plastic cow floating past on a wire could take itself so seriously. The earnestness of both Bill and Helen Hunt in the pre-shows was something to behold. Used to be pretty ambivalent about it, but my son Jamie loved extreme weather documentaries when he was younger, and therefore Twister the movie was on all the time as it was his favourite movie. So invariably, we would go to the attraction at least twice every time we went to the studios, and he'd buy every piece of merch going. Then, a strange thing happened. Probably because Jamie always enjoyed it so much, and it was great to see him look forward and enjoy going, I grew to appreciate its campy, poor-faced delights too. Also, depending where you stood, the noise and the jump scare at the end could definitely get you. That said, still look forward to Fallon. Smiley face. All the best. P.S. R.I.P. Bill.
All right, and the next one comes from Brian Jennings, and he says, I remember the first time we went to this attraction. My daughter was 7 or 8 and was scared but mesmerized by it, especially the cow gag. At the time, we lived in the United States Tornado Alley, so she knew what tornadoes were, as we usually ended up sheltering in the basement at least once a summer from the finger of God. However, we all thought the theatrics were really cool. It was a great first-time attraction, but every subsequent visit afterwards, I just didn't feel the need to go through it again.
I think that's a lot of people's thoughts, isn't it?
And Lottie Clay says, my first memory of the attraction was bittersweet because it replaced the original Ghostbusters Spooktacular. I couldn't imagine that Universal would actually replace a ride or a show. Little did I know at the time, but I was a big fan of the movie and was willing to give it a chance. The ride was always a guilty pleasure, though my favourite part was the detail in the queue. The old school TV hanging by a cord and the truck with a steel beam speared through the driver's side glass was pretty cool. The gift shop also had some great items. Is there any better way to make a chocolate milk beside the Moo Moo mixer?
What the hell?
You've seen them. I ask you. I can almost still hear the sirens blaring and a voice yelling to get out of the house now. Oh wait, I forgot. That's because I live in Kansas City now. I live Twister all the time. Got to go.
Scary, that. That must be scary to have actually experienced them firsthand.
One of my pen pals, she hates tornado season. I don't know anybody who loves it, but yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in Illinois, so we went in the basement a lot when I was a kid.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, we never got hit by one, but yeah, we'd have to go take shelter a lot. The siren is really creepy.
Yeah.
You know what was the best part of the Twister queue? It was the crushed Mickey Mouse ears underneath that tire.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite little hidden details because once you actually got into the pre-show, not the queue, there was actually this car hanging from the ceiling that just really cool. The wheel was constantly turning and there was Mickey Mouse ears underneath it. I will always remember that.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Excuse me. And Tom Brino says, I would always save my visit to Twister during midday, especially during the summer. I love the attraction, but it was a great place to cool down. Being a Van Halen fan, I would always get excited when I hear human beings played in the queue. I always wondered how much Van Halen got paid to do it, because around the same time, Howard Stern wanted them to do a song for his movie, and they wanted $1 million to do it.
Wow. And finally, Craig Darling says, one of the cool features of the Twister ride was the unexpected platform drop. The uncool thing was me almost my pants when it happened.
Sorry, Craig.
Yes. Our feelings now, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'll go to someone. Let's wrap it up with someone who quite liked it. So I'm going to go to Tracy first.
I didn't mind it, but there was just a bit too much standing around watching things and listening. And there was big rides out there, and I was over there to ride rides. I know it sounds awful. There was some really cool aspects to it. There were. You know, when you walk through like the concrete switchbacks. Very reminiscent of Rip Ride Rocket, actually, that when I think about it.
Yeah.
You know, as Dorothy,
Yeah.
you know, you see her sat there. And, you know, when we did the, did it have a name, the behind the scenes tour?
The booth tour, I do believe. It's
Yeah.
called.
That was pretty cool. We got to do that. And then to see the lockers and stuff, I thought that was awesome. For me, it was an overlong queue and pre-show before you got into this very short. I mean, I know obviously technically it's quite big. I can't think of the word.
Big, is that the word?
Yeah.
Technically, it's quite big.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that actual final show, there's a lot of elements go into it. So
Yeah.
you can't go on for ages. You know, and it's also got to reset and everything like that. But I just feel that everything that comes before is a bit overlong. Or was a bit overlong.
Yeah, consider the payoff's not worth the build-up.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to say. But my favourite thing was to see everything reset. Because I'm that type of person that when I see other shows and things like that, that's what I want to see. I want to see the inner workings. So I like that aspect about it because it show you how it would reset to... And there were some pretty cool effects as well. You know. And I can create a bloody twister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hunter?
I'm kind of right there with Tracy. I mean, it's a product of its time, and it was a cool thing. But by the time you actually got in there and you got to the cool part or the enjoyable part of the attraction, it was a very, very brief thing. I understand some people have special affection for it just because either they're big fans of the Twister movie or they got to do one of those really cool booth tours. But nothing, it never struck home with me. I mean, I've been going to Universal. I've gone probably total close to 50 times at this point, if not more. And it's just, by the time it was gone, I felt it was time to see a replacement anyways. So I don't have a lot of affection for it, but I understand a lot of people like it, and it will go down in the Universal books as probably something that was there way longer than it needed to be. But yeah.
I think my thoughts on it, it's very much an attraction of its time. When you look at, like, when the studios was still a place where you were looking at behind the scenes of how to make movies, it sort of sits alongside Earthquake and the Catastrophe Canyon over at Hollywood Studios. It's that type of attraction, which when those attractions first opened was really good because you weren't used to seeing that stuff, especially not happen right in front of your face. But when you get into what theme park attractions are now, and that most films are done with CG and stuff, that physical sort of actually seeing stuff looks dated, even though it's still quite cool. I mean, that indoor tornado, whatever you'd say about it, is still an awesome piece of technology that you cannot see. Well, literally, not a man-made one.
No, I was going to say, but I do actually feel that's quite a sad loss.
Yeah, that you cannot see that. Like Craig sort of said, you cannot experience that anywhere now. But the attraction itself, yeah, the queue and everything, it there's nothing to keep you interested. And then once you get in there, it's as I say, in its day it would have been quite cool. Now it's kind of like it looks very tired. It looked very dated. I am quite pleased that we did get to do it, or at least do the booth tour when we were over in 2015, because we were there. I think I remember getting up, I think it was the Sunday morning, and putting my phone on and going through and like, oh, they've just announced that Twister's closing. Right, we need to go and do that before we go back home. And we did the booth tour, and there was a whole rigmarole of following what we thought was someone taking us to the booth, and it wasn't. It was just a random guest. So when
Who joined us?
When he stopped and we were stood behind him going, "Which way do we go now, sir?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." So you're not supposed to be taking us to the booth? He was like, "No, I'm just a guest." Oh, okay then. So at that point we were like, we didn't know where the hell we were supposed to be, and he went, "What are you doing in the booth?" "Oh, I'll come with you." But that was pretty cool. Am I right in assuming that they won't be now, but when it was still around, that the Ghostbusters lockers were in the queue as well? Is that
That's
right?
what I was talking about. That's what
you
we
just
saw.
said lockers. You didn't, right?
Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, the Venkman stance and
we've got a photograph of it
Spengler.
somewhere.
Yeah, that's cool.
that was awesome.
But I know there's some references to it in Fallon now as well, isn't it? I think there's Bill Paxton's blue shirt is in there somewhere, and there's something else. I can't remember what it is now.
I think that's out on the street, like one of the street-facing windows has the Paxton shirt there hanging up.
Yeah, so that's cool. I think we talked about it last week, 2 weeks ago, whether they'd put some sort of homage to the ride in there. And it's cool that they have. You can't sort of say it'll be sadly missed because it is what it is. It's an old ride and it was about time it went. But yeah, Darren, you had a much more effect. Oh, actually, the best thing was when they changed the Aftermath shop out to the Halloween Horror Night shop. That was awesome.
I like that. Yeah.
That's the most time I've spent anywhere near that attraction. Actually, we probably spent more time in the queue when we were over in 2015 because I think we went through Freddy vs. Jason about 3 or 4 times, and that went through the the Twister queue. So, yeah, because of Halloween Horror Nights, we spent more time at Twister than we probably ever have done previously.
Sure.
Sorry about that, Darren. Your opinion, because you liked it a bit more than the rest of us. You've always been a sort of champion
Proponent.
for it. Yes.
I've always been a proponent for Twister. I really like the attraction because, like you touched on it there, it was one of the last attractions to really hit on the you're in a part of the movie in the like studio audience kind of thing. You're looking in on how we make a movie, which is how Universal was first introduced to me. And when I first went there, you'd have like Alfred Hitchcock, The Art of Making Movies. You had all these attractions where, they showed you how the movie making process was done, but also, entertained you with the ride at the same time. And that is an aspect that while it's really cool to have these immersive places like Diagon Alley where it's all around you, it was also really cool to be there to see like half of the set done and, the other half, with the director's chair and everything, with cameras set up and that kind of thing, showing you, this is what it looked like, when we were doing production on these kind of things. And, that's what was really cool for me is seeing that and, seeing set pieces there and, watching special effects basically happen in front of your eyes, because that's one thing I was really interested in when I was a kid was special effects in the movies. And the processes they use to make those, and this was a real showcase for that at the time. So, yeah. And like I said, that's something you don't really see too much in the park anymore. You have these really elaborate experiences and everything, but they don't really they don't break that fourth wall, and say, hey, you're part of the audience watching this, like a lot of the attractions used to there.
I can't think of anything now actually that does.
Yeah.
Horror makeup's probably about the closest.
Horror makeup show. That's about it.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have that weird fourth wall thing the Mummy's trying to do that never really made much sense. But,
yeah. If you're stuck in the queue for a long time, you might get it.
Yeah.
Maybe. But yeah, that and, the full experience. And I was also a big fan of the movie when I was a kid too. So seeing the Dorothy there in person and all that kind of stuff was really neat as well.
I think it's interesting that it's just popped in my head there that you think like Darren, you really appreciate that behind the scenes thing, and whereas we're kind of like, yeah, it was cool, but it's a thing of its day. When you look at, if you split us into the groups of me, Hunter and Tracy, and then you on your own, that you have been going, your idea of Universal Studios is that side of it because you've been going for such a long time, back when the park was, that's all it was, whereas Hunter and Tracy and I, we've only been going for like 12 or 13 years at that point. I think, Hunter, you first went in 2005, is that right?
That would be correct.
Yeah, and we went in 2004, so we're kind of on that cusp where it was really starting to change from that behind-the-scenes thing into the immersive theme park it is now. So your attachment to that's bigger than ours would be because that's what you grew up with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And it's quite sad when you look at how the theme park really has changed in we're just over 25 years at this point. So yeah, but they have to move with the time, you know. As I said, with the technology of making films and stuff being what it is now, that old school stuff doesn't work anymore unless you were going to do it in an ironic retro sort of. This is how things used to be filmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't. Like, what are you going to do now? This is a room where these people are working on cell shading for the CGI dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. You know, you couldn't really do it, could you? It's not really the same.
Real quick, a little bit of trivia. The arm that the drive-in movie theater sign was on was actually a leftover from Ghostbusters. That was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in its previous life. So it was the armature that brought the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man up onto the stage.
That's cool.
And yeah, instead of taking it out because it was a huge piece of equipment under the stage there, they decided to just use that as the drive-in movie sign that could knock over.
We need to do a retro episode on Ghostbusters the attraction because that's something I'm gutted at.
I know. We were too late for that party.
I would love to see something Ghostbusters now. Even if they themed it to like the new films now, it would be cool.
Yeah, anything Ghostbusters, I would be happy.
Yeah, it'd be quite interesting, Darren, that when you do get there and you do get to ride Fallon, that you'll have ridden or experienced every iteration of attraction that's been in that building. Well, every building really at this point.
Yeah.
Apart from Kong.
Yeah,
except for Kong.
Yeah. Oh, what a bummer. There's one attraction at all the park where you could have said you've ridden every iteration of every ride that's been in a specific soundstage, apart from that one.
Right.
Gutted.
Oh well.
You put us to shame anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's going to wrap it up. I hope you've all appreciated this look back at a now defunct attraction, and I hope you all, at least for those that didn't experience it that often, what we've discussed tonight made you appreciate it for what it was, and that you know, that is pretty much the last vestige of that type of attraction. I mean, even when you look at E.T., for all it's an opening day attraction, isn't that, it's still more a modern day attraction than it was like an old school Universal attraction, really. It wasn't showing you behind the scenes. That's quite interesting, actually.
Yeah, that was the one. I think that was it's kind of odd that was the outlandish one. That was like,
yeah, that was the theme park attraction where everything else was showing you behind the scenes. Yeah,
right.
That's probably why it's the one that's probably still there then.
Maybe.
But yes, I hope you appreciate Twister for what it was, and look at it with fond memories now. And if you didn't get to experience it, it's still on YouTube, so go and check it out. So that's going to wrap up the show. We appreciate Craig coming on to talk to us about his blue sky concepts and his patent on the tornado, and
awesome.
Darren and Tracy for their awesome reenactment of the pre-show video at the beginning.
So welcome.
And Hunter for another Fact Hunter segment there. It's awesome.
Anytime.
So, rest in peace, Mr. Paxton. You shall be missed. We all need to go and watch Twister. We should do a big UUOP Twister watch along at some point. So yeah, that's going to wrap up episode 240. We will see you back here next week. So take care, guys.
Finger of God.
That's it for another Unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. Make sure you never miss a show by subscribing on iTunes, and while you're there, please leave us a rating and a review. Listen to us on Stitcher, Google Play, and all your podcast apps. Email us with any questions or comments to podcast@uuopodcast.com, or even better, record your message at speakpipe.com/uuopodcast. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Pinterest, keyword UUO Podcast. Check out our blog for even more content at uuopodcast.com. Well, that's a wrap. See you next week.